So then, James, start a new series of bikes from the museum, highlighting, showcasing some of the most interesting individual and important bikes here in the collection, and we're going to start here.
Yeah, and what a great place to start, John.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the most iconic bikes, rare bikes, most unusual bikes in the collection, certainly as regards to road bikes anyway, the Brough Superior Golden Dream.
The Golden Dream.
Golden Dream.
Funny enough, I remember coming here since I was about 10 years old, and there's one bike that's always drawn me in, and it's this.
Yeah, well, do you know what? You mentioned something interesting that either I did know, I'd forgotten, or probably never knew about the metallic paint.
Yeah. So in 1938, when this came out, it was the first bike ever to be shown with metallic paint.
With metallic paint. And this, as a little lad, this is what drew you to it.
It was.
Yeah.
It was gold I was drawn in.
It's the gold, the metallic gold, yeah.
So it's a 1938 Brough Superior Golden Dream, but it's very interesting for various reasons, isn't it?
That's right. Built, well, potentially would have been built for the 1939 model year. Yeah.
Shown at Earl's Court, this particular bike.
Yeah, it was built as the Earl's Court show bike for that year. And of course, we all know what happened in 1939, which kind of put paid to a lot of people's dreams.
Yes.
and indeed put paid to the Golden Dream.
But it's got an interesting configuration then with the engine on this, isn't it? That's what really stands out with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Brough always traditionally were known for using other people's engines. Great engines, Jap, being the best example, latterly matchless. But this, an engine of their own making, of their own design. Except mass production wise, it never got there.
No, so and unlike the V-twins, which they were best known for, then this was a flat four.
Yeah, it is. It's a flat four, and I suppose when people think of flat fours, we think of a Porsche engine, don't we? Where they are
side by side.
A flat four, but these are actually stacked on top of each other, so two cylinders obviously each side to make the four. Yeah. So
because when you first look at it, it does look like a twin, isn't it? Like a Boxer.
Yeah, it does.
It is like a BMW, if you like, but it's it's four-cylinder. This one.
It is, yeah, and that plug cap sort of. If you hid that, you'd think, oh, it's a Boxer, but no, four cylinders.
Four-cylinder, unit construction, which was rare.
Unit construction, shaft drive.
Highly refined machine, rear suspension as well with the plungers at the back.
Yeah.
Still kept the sort of castle forks at the front, didn't it, which were of Brough's sort of own design.
Gives it that real pre-war look, but as you say, pre-war plunger, yeah. So
luxurious machine. And I was reading there's an amazing book on Brough's, Peter Miller.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the best books on these, and I didn't realise that he had a guy called Ike Hatch helped develop this engine. He was the chap behind the 7R Boy Racer engine, and the Mechanical Marvel Manxman engine,
and the Manxman,
which was incredible. So he had one of the greatest engineers at the time, and then test riding the legend that was Freddie Dixon. Test riding on these, and TT winner, and again, so he had the best people working on it.
Oh yeah, and what an engine it would have been. Unfortunately, of course, this show bike's got no internals.
Oh, okay, right.
Never did have.
All show, no go.
Yeah, all show, no go. Never had any internals. So, and in fact, the heads aren't even machined. So, it's all there, ostensibly. Looking at it, you know, from the outside, it's all there, but no crank, no rods, no pistons, etc., etc. So we've often thought, actually, and I mean, and you know this about us better than anybody, we're very much about running the bikes and letting people hear the bikes, and we take them to shows, and in fact, our friends scheme, we let people ride the bikes. And that's what this museum is all about. It's very much a living museum, and that's what we've tried to get across the last few years, that it's not like a dry, dusty place. And so what we've often thought about is, I say not reverse engineering it, because the plans do exist still.
Bring it to life. Like.
Yeah, that's right. But perhaps with with the benefit of, and these are always difficult sort of conversations to have, but like with the benefit of modern materials, but using the original plans and making it the internals as exactly as they would have been, but perhaps with up-spec'd, upgraded modern materials and techniques. What an interesting project that would be. Is that a bad thing to do that? I don't think so, because to us to have it running really would complete the work of that the guys started pre-war, but that got stopped by
the dream would become a reality.
The dream would become reality that got stopped by old Adolf. Yeah.
But I mean, you've done quite a bit of work on this to get it or maintain it in the condition it is now. Because I think, looking at again in Peter Miller's book, it went to the show. The war happened. Brough stopped making motorcycles after the war and became basically an engineering
company. Yeah.
And then there's a great photo which we'll show in the video. This sat in the canteen
at Hayden Road,
and I can just imagine the guys in their overalls, just having the half-time or sort of lunch break, and then this machine sat next to them.
Sat there in the canteen at Hayden Road at Nottingham. I know.
How long's it's been in the museum? Quite a while.
Yeah, that's right. Well, of course, the museum collection actually started from Roy, the founder's original personal collection, and then this bike came when the idea of the museum came about in the late 70s. This bike came along then, so it's actually been here before there was the actual museum building itself. And Colin, our chief restorer, is well into his 80s now, old Colin. He won't mind me saying, but Colin, back then in the 70s, he worked for Roy. Once the museum was created and once it was becoming more than an idea. And Colin actually restored this bike to as you see it today, because it had, as you say, in the canteen over all those years, it got a bit scruffy, But there's an interesting story about this as regards it sitting in what had been the Brough Works all those years. When Colin came to strip it down and to, obviously because we were painting it, so it all got stripped down. Despite the fact there'd been no internals, he got the cylinder head off. True story. This got the cylinder head off, and still going today. The newspaper, the Nottingham Evening Post, local newspaper, and there was a page from September 1939. We all know what happened then. There was a page stuffed down the cylinder, under the cylinder head, September 1939. Interesting enough in itself. But here's the story with the word. Medieval swear words, so we can't do that on camera these days, can we? Yeah, that's it. But it ends with ends with locks. Starts with a B. And somebody in all seriousness had written in copperplate handwriting
what they thought of
the medieval word that ends with locks. And why that was, who knows? Was it the mechanics knowing that they'd worked so hard on this bike that it wasn't going to be produced? Why had they done that? Well, we'll never know. That guy will be long gone now, but that's and we've still got that newspaper up at the office in the file. Amazing. Because each bike has a file, and that piece of newspaper, a whole page folded up but written across, is still in the file.
All part of the history of the bike.
All part of the history of the bike.
It is a truly incredible machine, and the thought of it maybe running one day. It's a tantalising.
It is. Well, of course, the best example of this, and on camera, we can perhaps see the bike in the background there, would be the Norton Nemesis, and that was an unfinished prototype, as many people will know, and our friend Alan Milliard got that going, and that was a big deal last year, and became a very well-known story on his own channel last year, and on our social media as well. Became a big story, and we actually culminated in using that at Goodwood. And so I suppose we were, in that respect, we were finishing what hadn't quite been finished. It had been started but not finished, and maybe it would be an interesting thing to do that.
This one,
I think so. Yeah, because all we would be doing would be making the things to the plans as they would have been made, but probably not better than Brough, but
up to modern
materials
standards,
change and accuracy of machining and all those sort of things has obviously improved over the years. So I suspect a good job could be made of it, and I think it'd be very interesting for people.
Definitely, definitely. But in the meantime, it's sitting here resplendently alongside the other Broughs. But like I say, if a chance to see a Brough that isn't a V-twin, then this is the one to see.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. That isn't a V-twin, and for visitors that aren't really, they'll know the name Brough, but might not necessarily know so much about specific models. They'll know about Lawrence Arabia and his love for Brough and how he got killed on an SS100, etc. But if they don't really know too much about Broughs, but they always associate them, as you say, with the V-twin engine, it can be quite a surprise seeing this. But it's certainly one of the star attractions of the inventory of the museum.
And it's always been in my mind from a little boy right through. It's still a real treat to see it, and what a great way to start this series. So
it is. We couldn't have started with better.
Excellent. Brilliant. Okay, James. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep your eye out for more videos coming up from bikes from the museum, and put some comments below. Say what you think about the wonderful 4-cylinder Brough Superior Golden Dream.